Do you want your life and your church to be more effective in God's mission? Today, you hear about new ideas to apply in your involvement to bless the nations. And I also have a very special episode for you today. I invite you to listen to a podcast produced by Google's NotebookLM about a book that I have recently written to guide the churches in Central America to participate in missions in a biblical, responsible, and strategic way. But I am sure that this book or the contents of this book will also be applicable, that you'll be able to apply them to you and your church. These are the 3 pillars of the Effective Missionary Church. So I pray that what you will hear today will be useful for you, will be useful for your church as you become involved in blessing the nations and obeying the Great Commission. So stay with me and let's talk about it.
Welcome to the Assisting2obey podcast by Gloria Sloan-Castellanos, missions coach, strategist, author, and the director of a missionary organization in Central America. It is designed to provide encouragement, ideas, resources, and opportunities for Christians to obey the Great Commission and bless the nations from their own corner of the world.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to be diving deep into effective missionary churches.
That's right.
And we have some incredible sources to kind of guide us through. We've got Los Tres Pilares de la Iglesia Misionera Eficaz by Gloria Sloan-Castellanos.
Wonderful book.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then also she's created a self-assessment questionnaire.
Yes.
Which is really interesting, kind of to evaluate your church's involvement in missions.
Yeah, I really like that. It helps you to kind of pinpoint where you are. Where you can grow.
Exactly. And then we've got a really powerful story from On Steady Ground. It's about a missionary's resilience and the strategic work that they did. So lots of good stuff to unpack today.
Yeah, these sources really provide a practical framework for churches.
Yeah.
To really think through how to engage in missions biblically,
right,
responsibly, and strategically.
Yes, absolutely. So we're talking about maximizing impact, avoiding those common pitfalls, just really making a difference for the kingdom.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what it's all about. And one really fascinating trend that we're seeing is kind of a shift, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing a shift from missionary agencies leading the charge to churches reclaiming their biblical authority in missions.
That's right, yeah. It's really about, it's a move towards a healthier and more sustainable model. And it's one where the churches are really empowered to lead the way.
Yes, definitely.
So speaking of leading the way, our source material really outlines something they call the 3 pillars of an effective missionary church. And I love this.
Yeah.
So we've got biblical, responsible, and strategic.
That's right. And each of those pillars, they build on one another to create a very strong foundation for engagement.
I love that.
For missionary engagement.
Yeah.
So the first one, that biblical pillar, it emphasizes the importance of rooting every action in Scripture.
Yeah.
Especially the Great Commission.
Right. So important. It's about making sure that the church is operating within its God-given authority, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And aligning its missions work with biblical principles.
Exactly. Yeah.
So important.
So important. And then the responsible pillar, it focuses on planning carefully. Considering the needs of the missionaries.
Yeah.
This includes things like health insurance, retirement planning, even emotional and spiritual care.
Yes. It's about treating the missionaries like the valuable assets they are, right?
Right.
And setting them up for success, not only in the field, but for the long haul.
Absolutely. Long term.
Yes. Long term. Very important.
Yeah.
And then finally, the strategic pillar, this is kind of where, the rubber meets the road.
That's right. Yeah. Getting things done.
Yes, it's all about setting those clear objectives, developing a well-thought-out plan, and then having those systems in place to evaluate your progress.
Absolutely. And, all of this ties into the concept of Missio Dei, God's mission.
Yes.
It reframes missions not as something the church does,
Right.
but as something the church participates in.
Right, yeah.
We are collaborators with God in his mission to redeem the world.
Oh, I love that. That's such a huge perspective shift, I think, and so important. So let's, we've talked about those pillars. Let's dive into some of the more tangible ways that churches can actually strengthen their missionary engagement. Our sources, they really highlight the importance of education, and not only for the pastors, but also for the congregation.
That's right. I mean, pastors really need a solid theological understanding of missions, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's just as important to equip the congregation with a basic understanding.
Yeah, that's so true. Our source material actually shares this really cool anecdote about a seminary in Mexico. And there was a missionary presentation, and it actually sparked a wave of commitment to missions from these seminary students. So just imagine the ripple effect when you have a whole congregation that's passionate about the Great Commission, right?
Wow. Yeah. And there are so many different educational resources available now, from online courses to books to conferences.
Absolutely.
There's something for everyone, regardless of learning style or budget.
Yeah, for sure. And beyond education, our sources, they also emphasize engagement and not just financial support.
Right. Yeah. It's so much more than that.
Yeah. We're talking about praying for unreached people groups, connecting with missionaries personally, and just advocating for missions within your local church. These are really acts of obedience, and they're powerful ways for the whole congregation to really participate in God's mission.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Acts of obedience.
Acts of obedience. Yeah, it's not just, writing a check, although, of course, that's important too.
Of course, yeah.
But, it's about getting involved on all those different levels. Now, here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Our sources, they advocate for kind of a no surprises approach.
Okay.
When it comes to sending missionaries.
I like that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So churches, they really need to establish clear requirements for potential missionaries. Things like education, experience, health, and even just like a clear understanding of the financial and logistical realities of missionary life.
Right. Very practical things that are so important to address up front.
Right. So important. And that's where an agreement of understanding or an MOU comes in.
Right. Yeah. Putting it all in writing.
Yes. Think of it as this really comprehensive agreement that just outlines everything. Roles, responsibilities, reporting structures, contingency plans, retirement provisions, you name it. It's in there.
It's all there in black and white.
In black and white.
Yeah.
And putting everything in writing is so crucial for maintaining those healthy relationships and avoiding misunderstandings down the line.
Exactly.
So important. And we see this, we see a great example of this in one of the stories that's shared. It's about this church that sent a family to reach, they call it People Group X in Europe.
Okay.
And because of their really clear communication and reporting structure, everyone stayed aligned with the original mission. And that resulted in really focused and effective ministry.
Yes. That's a great example of how clarity from the beginning, it really set everybody up for success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our sources also, they shed light on the importance of holistic missionary care.
Yeah, taking care of the whole person.
Yes, the whole missionary. We're talking about addressing their spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical well-being.
Absolutely. All those aspects are important.
Yes. So we're talking about regular medical checkups, counseling, debriefing opportunities, self-care strategies.
Yeah. Making sure they have what they need to stay healthy in all areas.
Yes, and even the often neglected area of retirement planning.
It's so important.
Because burnout is real. And healthy, supported missionaries are much more effective.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the strategic side of missions.
Okay.
Our sources really emphasize that being strategic isn't just about being efficient, It's about being good stewards of God's resources and ensuring the long-term sustainability of that missionary work.
Yes, being wise with what we've been given.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they outlined 5 key stages for churches to consider. We have commission, investigation, exploration, preparation, and execution.
It's kind of like a roadmap for churches.
It is.
True.
It's very helpful. So the commission stage, this is all about clearly defining the mission and communicating it to both the missionary and the congregation.
So important to have that clarity from the start.
Right. So important. So then investigation, this is where you really roll up your sleeves and do the research, right?
Like the nitty gritty.
Yeah. Like understanding the target people group, potential partners, costs, just the overall context.
The lay of the land.
Yes. Then comes exploration, where you determine if like a physical or a virtual trip is even necessary to gain those deeper insights. And technology can play a huge role here, right? We've got things like Google Earth, virtual tours.
It's amazing what you can learn from a distance these days.
It is. It's incredible. And then Preparation. This involves systematically getting the missionary ready for departure. So we're talking about legal matters, health considerations, family logistics, financial planning, and that crucial cross-cultural training.
Getting them equipped in every way possible.
Yes. And finally, execution. This is where the missionary, they hit the ground running, right?
Right. They put all that preparation into action.
Yes, they do. Our source material, they highlight the importance of patience and flexibility during this phase as the missionary is adapting to their new environment and beginning their work. And this actually reminds me of an anecdote that was shared about a speaker who had to completely revamp their church planting strategy for a different context in Cuba.
Oh, wow. So being able to adapt is key.
Oh, it's so important. Yeah. It's a great reminder that missions is not one size fits all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Context is everything.
Context is everything. Adaptability is key. And that actually leads us to the final stage outlined in our sources, evaluation.
Okay. Yeah.
And this isn't about finding fault. It's about learning and growing and ensuring that missionaries are supported and thriving.
Right. It's about accountability and making sure everyone's on track.
Exactly. Yeah. Evaluation focuses on the missionaries' actions and results, their character and maturity,
Okay.
and very importantly, their overall well-being. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
It's a holistic approach.
It is, yeah. Regular assessments in each of these areas are so crucial. It's a continuous process of checking in, adjusting courses needed, and just providing that support necessary for the missionary to flourish.
Right. Yeah. We want them to thrive, not just survive.
Exactly.
That-
So important. So now let's talk about the inspiring story of Gloria Sloan from On Steady Ground. Her resilience in the face of just unimaginable tragedy is truly remarkable.
Yeah. Her story really highlights the profound strength and that unwavering commitment that comes from deep faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And, despite losing her husband and daughter in that tragic accident, her commitment to God's mission, it never wavered.
It's amazing.
Yeah, she actually returned to the mission field with her remaining children, and she was driven by this even greater sense of purpose.
Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that, God's calling on our lives. It doesn't disappear when we face hardship.
Yeah.
He often uses those trials to refine us and equip us for even greater service.
That's so true. Gloria's story is just this testament to the transformative power of the Holy Spirit, even in those, darkest of times.
Yeah.
She didn't just preach the gospel, she lived it.
Right.
She modeled resilience and grace and just unwavering faith.
Yeah, and her story reminds us that effective missions, it's not just about skills and strategies.
Yeah.
It's about the heart. It's about character and maturity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, her willingness to adapt her plans after the loss of her husband just shows how important flexibility is in missions,
Yeah.
She embraced this new approach, training others and moving to new locations where her skills were needed.
It's a great example of not giving up, but, finding new ways to move forward.
Yeah.
Always focused on that ultimate goal.
And Gloria's story also highlights the importance of empowering local believers to carry on the work of missions. And we see this in the story of Antonio Perez, who was one of Gary Sloan's closest friends and mentees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Love that.
And, Antonio just had this incredible passion for Jesus. And after Gary's passing, he not only continued the work they had started together, but he also became a missionary himself, thanks to the training he had received at the Gary Sloan Bible Institute.
Wow, what a legacy.
It's really amazing. And it's such a powerful example of how investing in those local leaders can just create this ripple effect,
Right.
multiplying the impact of missionary work far beyond what any single individual could accomplish.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It really is.
It's a beautiful testament to the legacy of both Gary and Gloria.
Yeah.
The legacy that continues to bear fruit long after they are gone.
It's incredible to see how God can use even the most difficult circumstances to advance his kingdom, And it reminds us that we all have a role to play in the Great Commission, even if we aren't called to be missionaries on the field.
That's a key takeaway, I think.
Yeah.
Missionary engagement is a holistic process that starts with the church but extends outward, involving every believer.
Antonio's story is so inspiring, It just shows how investing in those local leaders can have this ripple effect and expand the impact of missions so much further than what any one person could do.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it brings us back to something we were talking about earlier, the importance of intentionality at every level of missions. Effective missionary engagement, it's not about just randomly throwing resources at a problem. It's about thoughtful planning, strategic execution, and a deep commitment to the well-being of the people on the front lines.
Right. Yeah. Working smarter, not just harder.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about the big strategic moves either. Like, sometimes the greatest impact comes from the quiet faithfulness of people who just choose to keep going, day after day, trusting in God's strength to carry them through.
Yeah, like Gloria.
Yeah, like Gloria Sloan. Even after facing unimaginable tragedy, she continued to answer God's call in her life. And her story really highlights that effective missions, it's not just about skills and strategies. It's about the heart.
Right. It's about character, maturity, that heart transformation.
Absolutely. And her willingness to adapt her plans after the loss of her husband is just such a good example of how important flexibility is in missions,
Right.
She could have given up so easily, but instead she embraced a new approach, training others and moving on to new locations where her skills were still so needed.
Right. She was willing to pivot, to change.
Yeah. And she also demonstrates how, even if we're not called to go overseas, each of us can still contribute to the Great Commission.
Yeah.
We can pray for missionaries, we can support them financially, and we can advocate for missions in our churches and our communities.
Absolutely. There's so many ways to be involved.
There are so many ways. And it's incredible to see how God can use even the most difficult circumstances to advance his kingdom. Gloria's experience is a testament to the transformative power of the Holy Spirit, even in the darkest of times.
Right. Yeah. And she reminds us that God's calling on our lives doesn't just disappear when we face hardship.
Right.
He often uses those very trials to refine us and to equip us for greater service.
That is so encouraging. Now, the article mentions that Gloria now leads Assist.
Oh, wow.
That missionary organization that created the self-assessment questionnaire.
Oh, yeah, from the beginning.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah, her journey has come full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah, and it shows how important it is to invest in the next generation of missionaries and mission leaders.
She's using her experience to equip and empower others to carry on the work.
Yeah, what a legacy.
And speaking of equipping, the article also mentions that Assist has a website specifically for English-speaking donors.
Oh, that's great.
Called Assisting2obey.
Okay, Assisting2obey.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a tangible way that people can get involved in supporting missions, even if they can't go themselves.
Even if they can't physically go.
Right. They can be part of providing resources, training encouragement to those who are on the front lines.
Yeah, it's so important.
It really reinforces that idea that missions isn't just about going overseas.
Right.
It's about the whole church.
The whole body.
Working together. To fulfill the Great Commission.
We all have a part to play.
Everyone has a role to play.
Exactly.
We can pray. We can give.
We can go.
We can advocate.
Yeah.
We can educate ourselves.
We can use our gifts.
And we can support those who are called to go.
There's so many ways to be involved.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
Both personally and as a member of my church.
For sure.
I'm wondering what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with today.
I hope they'll see that effective missions is about more.
Just good intentions.
Right.
It's about integrating those three pillars.
Yes.
The biblical, the responsible, and the strategic.
Yes.
To everything we do.
Into the fabric of who we are as a church.
As a church, exactly. It's about creating a culture. That supports and empowers missionaries. And equips the entire church body. To participate in the Great Commission.
I think that's a great place to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. So as we wrap up our deep dive today, I think the big question is, how will you answer the call to participate in God's mission? The Great Commission, it isn't just a command for a select few. It's a call to action for every follower of Christ.
So what will you do to support and encourage those on the front lines of missions? How can you use your unique skills and talents to advance the gospel?
Now, speaking of getting involved, I know some of our listeners might be feeling super inspired right now.
Yeah, fired up.
But also maybe a little overwhelmed.
Right, where do I even start?
Yeah, like, okay, these three pillars are great.
Yeah.
But what do I actually do?
How do I put this into practice?
Yeah, and the book actually has a whole chapter on this.
Really?
It talks about how every member of the church can be involved in missions. Whether it's through prayer, giving, advocacy, or even using their skills and talents to support the work.
So everyone has something to offer.
Everyone has a role to play.
I love that.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the whole church body working together.
Yeah, we all have different gifts.
Right, different resources.
And we can all use them
to make a difference.
to make an impact.
So for that listener who's sitting there thinking, okay, I'm fired up, I want to do something.
Right. What's next?
What's one concrete step they can take today
Okay, good question.
to get more involved in missions?
I would say start by having a conversation
Okay.
with your pastor or your missions leader.
Okay.
Ask about your church's missions involvement
Yeah.
and how you can get plugged in.
Okay.
Maybe there's a missionary you can commit
Mm-hmm.
to praying for.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a need for financial support.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you have skills or talents that you can use
Right.
to help with administrative tasks or communication efforts.
To wrap up this whole deep dive,
Okay.
I want to go back to Gloria's story one last time.
Okay.
Her journey has been marked by,
Yeah.
incredible highs and unimaginable lows.
The highest of highs and the lowest of lows.
But through it all, she remains so steadfast in her
Oh.
commitment to her calling.
Yeah, she's a true inspiration.
It's a reminder that missions work
Uh-huh.
isn't always easy.
No, it's not a walk in the park.
It's not glamorous.
Right.
There will be challenges and setbacks.
There will be.
But if we are rooted in Scripture,
Yes.
committed to caring for one another,
Huh?
and strategic in our approach, we can make a lasting impact
We can change the world.
for the kingdom.
Yeah.
And her story also reminds us that missions isn't just about numbers or statistics.
No,
It's
no.
about people.
It's about people.
It's about sharing the love of Christ
Yeah.
with those who haven't heard it
Yeah. Spreading the good news.
and helping them experience the transforming power
Yeah.
of the gospel.
The gospel changes everything.
It does. It's about partnering with local churches and communities around the world
Uh-huh.
to advance God's kingdom together.
Together.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on.
It is.
Thank you so much for joining us
Yes, thank you.
for this deep dive into effective missionary churches.
It's been a great conversation.
I hope it sparked some new ideas
Yeah.
and inspired you to get more involved
Yeah.
in the Great Commission.
Go out and make a difference.
Until next time,
Yes.
keep diving deep.
Keep learning.
So I pray that the contents of this podcast has caused you to edge a little bit closer to an exciting life of obedience to God's most important command, the Great Commission. I invite you to follow me on this platform, leave a review, a comment, a like, and share it with others so many more Christians can discover the joy of aligning with God in His mission to bless the nations. As you heard in the podcast today, I am the author of the 3 pillars of the Effective Missionary Church, Los 3 pilares de la Iglesia Misionera Eficaz. I'm also the director of Assisting2obey, a missionary organization focused on coaching the pastors and the leadership of the churches here in Central America to participate in missions in a responsible way, in a biblical way, and in a strategic way. We serve the churches free of charge thanks to the provision of our national and international partners and donors. If you would like to join the team of supporters, send me a message or visit the Assisting2obey website, a platform created to link the Ministry of Asociación Asiste with you, their English-speaking donors. You'll find all the links in the description below. This is Gloria Sloan-Castellanos, assisting you to obey.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. Let's continue the conversation on our social media, website, or YouTube channel. You'll find all the links in the description below. This was the Assisting2obey podcast by Gloria Sloan-Castellanos. See you soon.